Well, hello, hello. What a throwback this is, eh? We're doing the Golden Goal Fantasy Football podcast once again. Felt like a good time to chat about Sky, really, being the overhaul. And yeah, as always, I'm very pleased to say, and it's lovely to see you, mate. I'm joined by my good mate Sam, who I think you're off to a flyer in Sky. I didn't put your rank next to your name like other podcasts might do, but I think you can tell the audience yourself how you're getting on.
Yeah, good to be back, mate. Good to see you. I'm glad to be doing this, and it started well. I thought I wanted to get off to a good start this year because I basically jacked it in last season, having just failed miserably by Christmas by the World Cup, I think. So yeah, currently sat at sort of 300th with quite a few transfers in hand as well, which is obviously a winner. So fairly engaged in trying to get the overhaul period right. And I know that you are as well, mate, aren't you? Because you want to try and climb the ranks.
Yeah, I'm using it as a bit of an excuse and a cop-out, but I've been so busy. I still prefer Sky as a game, don't get me wrong, but I've been so busy with the FPL YouTube that Sky's taken a bit of a back burner for me. And as a result, I've made some pretty crummy decisions and just not thought about some of my transfers properly. So it's not been great. I think I'm probably 10 times your rank at the moment, but I'm never going to win it, but my goal is always to win my local pub mini league back in my hometown, and I'm still in with a shout at that. I think, yeah, nail the overhaul and the few transfers from it. I think I've got a chance of doing that. So that's my goal now.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're still in a good shot to get a good kind of overall finish as well, given so many people paying transferred early on. You'll get a natural organic rise just as a result of that. So you've got to be hoping for sort of what? At least top 500 overall?
Yeah, I reckon so, mate. I reckon so. That's definitely... to be honest, I'll probably have to finish there to win the Mini League, so it's quite a competitive one now. And I've shared like all the SkyFF content that's on YouTube, like Planet FPL, 3for1, etc. I've shared that with other people in the Mini League now, so you can conveniently see they've become better Sky players as well as a result. So yeah, that used to be my little secret, but I couldn't keep it a secret any longer.
Yeah, man. The content works, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Right, so just go through the content. Before I do, actually, I just want to say, looking at Twitter for questions and stuff, the response has been absolutely amazing, considering, we haven't had the time to do one of these for a good few months. Seeing people keen to watch us live and stuff, we just, really appreciate it. It's lovely to see, and we do it for the love of the game, to be honest. So the more people, the better, really. We've got loads of questions to go through, but before we do that, I reckon... Where do you want to start, mate? I've got like a fixture grid where we can talk about teams with good fixtures, single game days. I did a little screenshot of all like the captaincy days that you need to think about covering. And then I've shared a draft that I've created. I know you want to be a bit secretive about yours with your rank, but you put together a nice differential draft in response to someone's questions. I think it's probably worth just having a look at the fixture grid, isn't it, to start off with?
I think that's a good start. Do you know what? Like, in terms of my team, whatever we go with, we're all kind of in the same circle, aren't we? We're all going to be 8, 9, 10 people all the same. And actually, the team I put together is super similar, bar one or two. But yeah, I'm happy to go with the fixtures and the game days for sure.
Yeah, I didn't want to start off the stream by saying that, but ultimately we'll probably yip you out for about an hour. But ultimately, like most people's teams will be 2 or 3 players different, right? Like there's so many shoe-in players at the moment that you can't. They're just the best players in the game, and you have to pick them. So.
Well, we were chatting about this, weren't we, before we came on, and we said that sort of phrase of differential is essentially going, I know that there is a best template 11, but I'm going to go against it. That's what it is, and hoping that over a course of however many weeks you're punting on someone, that they're going to essentially flukily outscore the best team, or the template changes and that player that you've got in it then becomes a template, which is probably the art of fantasy football, right? If you can start, as Paul McNulty says, if you can start the new template off, then you're ahead of everyone else. You've got all those points and they've got to make a transfer to get in there. So it's finding that balance, isn't it, with your team?
Absolutely that. And I'm just looking at the chat. Dave Hannigan, Bobby, Glenn Murray, Adam Byram, and Ben. Lovely to see you in the chat. Thank you for joining. Just looking at these fixtures, mate, are there any teams that stand out to you with a particularly good run that might not be completely obvious to other players? I know Brighton, to me, look like they've got a decent run. They've just kept a clean sheet against West Ham, their first clean sheet of the season. Could they go on a bit of a defensive run? I don't know, but I certainly like the look of some Brighton assets based on these fixtures.
Yeah, I do as well. And I think there's a few names that we could chuck into that. I actually looked through trying to look where I could potentially get a bit of a, I don't know, potentially a bit of a block defense or a double up in defense. I just didn't like any teams really from the off. Obviously, we know that kind of Liverpool have looked pretty solid defensively, but I just didn't like the look of their first however many games. Arsenal are looking a little bit shaky. Man City seem to just be continually leaking goals. Although I feel there will be a period with City where they will just go on one of those mega runs. But as it stands, I think I just sort of came up with essentially Brighton as the nice little run and potentially a couple of players to attack from there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And obvious name being Lewis Dunk. I know he's been a little bit disappointing this season compared to how he's done in the past, but he's still, I think, of all players in the Premier League, well, he missed a game, didn't he, against West Ham? So I think he might have got knocked off top spot, but he was the player that completed the most passes in the Premier League up until last week. So he's still on for passing bonus every game. And yeah, you'd like to think with a Brighton clean sheet, well, them getting one clean sheet, they can kick on and keep some more. So for me, he's pretty much nailed into my draft with. And I'm also considering, I think you've mentioned him when we were talking off air, Estupinian, and I really like the look of Pascal Gross as well.
Yeah, that's the three names for me. Interestingly, I was sort of slating I was slating Levi Colwill from Chelsea, and then I about him being a useless Sky asset. And I somehow ended up with him again at the end of my
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and then I looked at his points versus Lewis Dunk's points, and he's outscored Lewis Dunk for the first half of the season.
Has he? I didn't realise that. Wow.
Yeah, so that was quite funny. But I think Lewis Dunk had a couple of games where he was suspended from red card, didn't he? And then he was suspended again at the end for the 10-pointer because of the yellows. I just think with Estupiñán back and players returning back in there, they will keep more clean sheets. It wouldn't be enough for me, I don't think, personally. I may get humble pie, and that's fine because none of us know what's going to happen. But I don't think I'm going to double up defensively on them. My concern with Estupiñán is re-injury. I had a little look on one of the many websites, and he's missed a fair chunk of time with muscle injuries, and that puts me off. I think his potential is huge, but he's probably at risk of another injury in a condensed period of games, which we've obviously got sort of coming up. So for me, that's why I would probably choose Lewis Dunk over Estupiñán from Brighton.
Yeah, you probably know more about this territory than I do, given your career. But yeah, I just think you've seen it with countless football players in the past, haven't you? Once they injure a muscle quite badly, it's something that will niggle them for the rest of their careers. So yeah, I completely agree with you on Estupiñán. I think he should be considered a bit of an injury risk from now on, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think in other years I potentially would have gone with that, and then it's a transfer potentially waiting to happen.
Absolutely. Moving on from that fixture grid then, I think Brighton, are there any, well, before I do, are there any other teams that really stand out to you there?
Not from, I think once you take into account, which we'll look at later on, the shoe-ins for captaincy and stuff, I don't think it leaves too much in terms of where you could take a punt on another player.
Yeah.
I know we're going to come to that later on, but I think when we're covered with captaincy days and who we want, there's only a couple of slots. So, that's where I'm at with that. So the answer to that is no. I know that United have actually got an all right run saying that, but I just wouldn't want any United assets at all.
The only one I'd consider, and there's a question about this previously about players I regret selling and stuff. Honestly, I think Onana will do you quite nicely as a keeper in Sky. If you just sit with him and hold him, he'll get clean sheets when you don't expect it and probably score as well as all the other goalkeepers in the game, to be honest. That seems to be what he's up to. Well, obviously he's off to AFCON, isn't he? So yeah, ignore that.
But afterwards for sure. But yeah, apart from that, I don't fancy any of their other assets. So they've got some good games. So there might be something there for someone for sure.
All right then. Next up, there might be more than these six, right? So, and feel free, Sam, because I put these together myself without really consulting you, but I put six players on the screen that I think are pretty much, well, they're six that have not moved from any of the drafts that I've made. I've gone for Saliba, Cole Palmer, who is just insane value at 6.5 million. I think over the last, since he's joined Chelsea, I'm pretty sure he's the got the best goal threat of any midfielders bar Salah, and he's 6.5 million. So yeah, you can't ignore him. Saka, I don't really like him too much because of his price in Sky, but given that Arsenal have a captaincy one of the first days of the period after the overhaul, I just think he's going to be so popular that you can't really ignore him. And he's very expensive, so you can swap him out for Salah later on, was my thinking. And then Watkins, Van Dijk, I guess Trent is in the conversation as well as a Liverpool defender, but I like the solid, steady Van Dijk. I think they're on equal points anyway at the moment, aren't they? So there's nothing to separate the two. And then Rodri, one of my massive regrets this season is not having him from the start, to be honest. He was in so many of the drafts I made before the start of the season, and I took him out. And obviously, he absolutely tore it up first 3 or 4 games. So yeah, those are my 6 that I've named. You got any more? Obviously, Lewis Dunk, we mentioned him, didn't we?
Yeah, I think Pascal Gross and Lewis Dunk are shoo-ins. He's playing a really nice advanced role, isn't he, Pascal Gross? I think he's just a jack of all trades, and wherever he plays in the previous few seasons, he's always scored points.
Yep.
I think he's just come to the fore this year. It's taken a few years. So many people have never owned him. I actually haven't owned him in Sky. I've had him in FPL drafts, strangely, since the start of the season, but I haven't owned him in Sky. So I think, yeah, one of those boys. I do actually think Jared Bowen is a shoe-in.
Oh, yeah, he has to be with the captaincy, doesn't he?
I said to you, didn't I, Tom, off air again, about the concerns around him potentially with Kudos and Paqueta out. But I think given that you can sling the captain's armband on him a few times for some quite nice games, I wouldn't overthink that personally.
Yeah.
And have him in as a shoe-in. And then, of course, you've got Haaland in there as well. I presume you probably even thought that's so obvious it's not worth putting in.
And I guess just a little bit injury dependent, right? I'm sure he will be back for not this weekend coming, the weekend after, obviously when they play. But yeah, for that reason, I didn't include him. So yeah, Dunk.
I knew that'd be the reason. And then I think they're all really good picks, mate. They're all good picks. And Saka, interesting. Saka's a funny one. I think I'm gonna go in with him. He still scored quite well. If you look at his points return, I know that they're in that screenshot that everyone's seeing now is against 5 other really, really top performing players, but
he's holding his own.
He's returned well, and people are going, he's out of form, he's this, he's that. He may well not be quite hauling how we want him to, but he has had good point returns. And so you're thinking with those fixtures and a couple of opportunities for captaincy, he may pick up and kick on. We know that the quality is there from him.
Yeah, I was just going to say, anyone else in the chat throw in some names as well if there are any shoe-ins you fancy. But given that in addition to these 6, we mentioned Bowen, Haaland, and there was Dunk as well, and maybe Gross.
Dunk or Gross, yeah.
That's 9 or 10 players sorted in your overhaul team already, isn't it? Pretty much. It just seems that way. We know who the best players are. It's got to be them, hasn't it?
Yeah, and just because it's an overhaul, I don't think too much is going to change. Like, there could be that temptation to rip up your previous team. But actually, if you've had kind of a good handful of those already, you're going to keep them in there.
I mean, I think my overhaul draft to my team before the overhaul is going to be 2 or 3 players different. That's about it. It's just an interesting one this year with the timing, isn't it? But it is what it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we could talk about that, all that other, should we have an overhaul? Should we not? I know that's been in circulation recently, but it gives everyone a chance. It's going to reset the template for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But if you can, Sky's a game of patience, right? So you can be patient, not make any silly moves, leave the shoe-ins essentially in, or for a good period of time, and only make moves with an injury or a 3 for 0 or a fixture run or whatever. People are going to start running out, and that template will change again, essentially, won't it?
Absolutely. What did I have next? Yeah, it was just a little screenshot of the upcoming, less obvious games that you need a captain for, basically. So looked at all these shoe-ins, and some of them might not be covered by a shoe-in. So Monday, 15th of January is probably a good talking point, to be fair. Burnley and Luton. Traditionally, if this was in the middle of a normal period where you'd have to use 2 transfers, you wouldn't go, personally, I wouldn't go anywhere near it. But given you can start with a goalkeeper or defender or any player from these teams, captain them on this day, and then use 1 transfer to replace them with someone else, I do think it's viable to just pick a player. There was, at the start of the season, there was a similar situation, wasn't there, where there was a single game day or something. I can't remember the exact details, but
it was Forest.
Yeah, exactly. We all had a Forest player. We all had Gibbs White. I had Gibbs White anyway. And then for the cost of one transfer, you get a captaincy. So yeah, do you reckon you'll cover that one with a keeper?
It's so easy, sort of 9 days out, to go, I'm not going to do it, but I'm already getting those temptations, and I think I would kick myself if I didn't pick one of the keepers and they got a Clino and 18 points as captain, because I think my personal thinking is, and we discussed this earlier, and you were initially on the other side of the coin, but I did think there is potential for Burnley to keep a clean sheet against Luton at home. Is it a high percentage? We don't need to look at any odds to realise it's probably not, given how the season's gone. The only concern there with that, Tom, for me, is Luton aren't Man City, and so they're not going to be having tons of possession. Burnley are obviously a possession-based side, and probably not a lot of shots. So if Luton do score, it's most probably going to be a 4-pointer, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's just something to think about, isn't it? I do feel on the other side of the coin, rather than banking on a clean sheet, you could bank on Kaminsky, because this is kind of how I'm thinking of it anyway. Given how Burnley got on against the other sort of one of the worst teams in the Premier League in Sheffield United, they smashed them, didn't they? But they obviously took a lot of shots. I don't think they'll beat Luton like that. But could you bank on saves from Kaminsky as opposed to a clean sheet from Trafford's the Burnley keeper, isn't it?
Yeah, Trafford, yeah.
I know it's not ideal, but you could get a 10-pointer as a captaincy or an 8-pointer as a captaincy on that day. And for one transfer, that's kind of worth it. I think I can't remember who tweeted it to me or on a message. I think a transfer this season is worth between 8 and 10 points, something like that.
Yeah.
So
it's not that high, is it? You obviously want it to be more than that, but like if you're taking it, fantastic. 8 points. It wasn't great, but I've got an 8-pointer, and then move on. So my thinking on that is there's two sides to this. Luton have a better fixture run afterwards.
Right.
So you could go with the Luton keeper, expect, like you said, an 8, maybe maximum 10-pointer, and then kind of maybe keep until you decide there's a daisy chain, or I don't know what whatever your plans are to move off of the keeper. The problem with the Burnley one is they've got one hell of a run afterwards, haven't they? They've got like City, Arsenal, Liverpool, and someone else in there as their first 4. Yes, you may pick up saves bonus in some of them, but it's at what cost of how many goals conceded? I mean, I had Leno for the Liverpool game when Liverpool scored 4 and he got saves bonus, but it doesn't mean anything because it gets taken straight back
points,
down. Yeah, for the goals conceded after 2 or whatever, 1 or 2 or whatever it is. So I think it's really difficult, and I don't know yet. I know roughly what I kind of want to do, and I know where I want to go goalkeeper wise. I think it's just whether I cover it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Traditionally, Tom, none of these single game days for keepers or defenders has paid off yet, is it? I brought in Lewis Dunk for that single versus Palace. Boom, 1-1.
Oh, yeah, that's a terrible game to cover, isn't it?
Yeah. But in the back of your mind, it's always there could be a clean sheet plus passing. So,
and to be fair, you mentioned the Lewis Dunk game, but I'm pretty sure he got a 5-pointer in that, didn't he? So,
he did.
And
he
that's
got 10-pointer.
That sort of justifies, if you were spending one transfer on the move, that sort of justifies it, I think. So did Pascal Gross. I remember I had both Dunk in one team, Gross in the other, and they both scored the same.
Yeah, well, he's been very consistent, hasn't he? So that's the one big question for me there, Tom. I think I'll face a lot of these other issues a little bit further down the line, but I've got some idea. This one, I'm like, I hear someone make an argument for not covering it, and I'm like, right, I'm with them. And then I'll hear someone cover it, doing an argument and covering it, and I'm like, right, I'm with them. So, yeah, I just know what's going to happen. I'll put Trafford in, he'll concede like 30 minutes in. I'll be like annoyed with myself, and then do the transfer, and another one wasted, essentially.
One thing I definitely won't be doing is actually watching the game either. That's like the worst thing to go through as a fantasy football manager, is watch a game and then hope for your team or your player to keep a clean sheet. That's just horrendous, isn't it?
Yeah. And when it's gone, interest is lost.
Let us know. I'm just interested to see what the rest of the community thinks. So yeah, let us know in the chat what you're thinking about that single game day. I imagine people probably share the same kind of thoughts with us, really. But yeah, let us know in the chat what you think about that one. I've included a few other single game days, but after looking at my shoe-in list, I think some of them will already be covered. So you got Yeah, Brighton and Wolves. I mean, you're probably going to have Dunk or Gross to cover that one. Thursday, the 1st of February, I didn't include him on the list, but we're saying, Bowen is sort of a shoe-in. And I'd say if you got Bowen, you're probably going to captain him West Ham v Bournemouth on the 1st of Feb. But likewise, you could go for Solanke and then use him as the captaincy for that one. Crystal Palace and Chelsea, I mean, you're going to have Cole Palmer, aren't you? Let's be honest. I mean, if you're not having Cole Palmer in your team, you're missing out, I think. He's one of the best midfielders in the game, regardless of price. He's the best captain that day, isn't he? Unless he's injured, of course, but I'm sure he will be. Sunday the 18th, again, that's a Brighton game, so we don't really need to worry about that one. And then Monday the 19th, we've got an Everton and Crystal Palace single game day. That's another one that's a little bit question mark.
So I think I'll be covered. I think my go-to on goalkeeper will be the Palace number 1. There lies the problem, though. Who is going to be the long-term Palace number 1?
Yeah.
Is it going to be Dean Henderson? Is it going to be Sam Johnson? Sam Johnson kept his place when Dean Henderson came in. But now Sam Johnson's out and Henderson's in and playing well. He made some nice saves yesterday evening. Saw a couple of highlights from that. That will be my choice. So, but I don't know how to get there, whether I start with someone, wait for more information and then go from there. But that's my current thinking. And that could potentially also cover off that Chelsea Palace Monday night as well. Like you say Cole Palmer is out or whatever it may be. This Palace at home there, which is they're a solid side, aren't they? I'll be happy to potentially captain a Palace player, I think, that day if Palmer was out.
Yeah, that Palace goalkeeper one is quite unique, isn't it? Because with Arsenal, Raya is the first choice in the Prem. But with Palace, I feel like, well, just my opinion, I feel like Dean Henderson and Sam Johnson are equal ability. So there's nothing, and I don't think Roy's done anything to suggest who is actually first choice when they're both fixed. I'm pretty sure when Dean Henderson signed, he was injured, and then Sam Johnson got injured, and Dean Henderson went in the team. So it's really annoying, isn't it, that there isn't a clear-cut option for that.
Yeah, I don't think Roy says too much either. So it's kind of like just wait for the lineup and see kind of who's in there. If anyone is keen on doing that, I did have a look last night. If you do go for a Burnley and Luton and fancy jumping on Palace for their first game, which is Arsenal, you get to see the team sheet. So you could see who's in the sticks. Yeah. If Sam Johnson's not quite back, then it doesn't really help, I don't think. But then you could wait again to think to the next one. You get an opportunity to see again. So if you wanted to hold Trafford or whoever it was for 3 games, or 2 or 3 games, then there's that option there as well. So that's just because I've been looking for my team as a potential or a way of finding him in. So there is that there.
And we're talking over a month away now for the other games, but we've got a Wolves and Sheffield United single on Sunday the 25th of February. And then Monday the 26th of Feb, we've got a West Ham and Brentford day. That 25th of Feb, I mean, what are you thinking about with that one?
Is that the Wolves one?
Wolves and Sheffield United, yeah.
So what date is it, sorry?
Sunday the 25th of February.
Yeah, so Hwang will be back for that, won't he?
Yeah, good point. Yep.
The Asian Cup is the 12th of Jan to the 10th of Feb. So it's like a good 10 days or whatever afterwards. So I think I'll be kind of potentially, in fact, I will be going into Wolves. I think Sheffield at home and Wolves have looked good. They've got a couple of good players, haven't they? Neto's back. I think, yeah, I'll be definitely trying to cover that one. And that could potentially at the moment be Hwang.
Yeah, I like it. And then Monday the 26th. It's something I've been thinking about, given that my position in the leaderboard at the moment, and I think it's as safe as a punt can get, really. And this gives me an opportunity to talk about him. I think Ivan Toney could be a good option on Monday the 26th. I know because on the game week's really funny, isn't it? They've got a really short game week, 23, I think. And then the rest of the games for the same FPL game week are called game week 24 in Sky. But if you look at the fixture on Saturday the 20th of January, Arsenal have got Crystal Palace at home, and then Brentford have got Nottingham Forest at home. I really like the thought, maybe in just one of my teams, picking Toney, who is now back from his betting suspension, and captaining him on the 20th of January if we get good news that he's back in the team, and then also just holding him for the duration, because he scored 20 Premier League goals last year. That's better than quite a lot of the shoe-ins that we just looked at. And, you know, as long as he stays at Brentford, which I think he could well do, given how poor they are at the moment and how much they might need him, I think he's a good option.
Yeah, like I said to you earlier, I think the benefit with Tony is that he hasn't been injured, so he will have been playing
Yeah.
games behind closed doors. He would have been training. The concern maybe is Mbeumo's still out, isn't he? So is his main partner in attack, who would have been involved in lots of his goals and vice versa, isn't going to be there with him for the start. But I still think it's a great punt, and he'd be on penalties as well, won't he, Tom? So all you need is a penalty and a couple of shots, and you've got yourself a 20-point haul.
An interesting one. Charles Morgan in the chat he said no Elise. Obviously he's injured at the moment, but given that we're talking about things in over a month's time, perhaps Elise could be an option for those Palace days as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, he could be. He's another hamstring man, and if you read again, that's like you said earlier, it's kind of my sort of. I look at that area, been based in that sort of work, and it sort of stands out a little bit more to me. But you listen, if you go and read Roy's comments on it, he's got to be really protected in like 2 or 3 game periods. So I guess the punt would be great in a short block if you'd identify 2 or 3 games. Again, I wouldn't be a player I go for, and neither would Eze, to be fair. Similar reasons.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
But I would never ever want anyone to ever listen to what I've got to say and then not go with anything. That's my personal opinion on them. They are both absolutely capable of hauls. And look, what did Elise get? Did he get two goals or something before the overhaul? Was it something like that?
Yeah, I mean,
goal and assist or something like that. I can't remember.
When you look at his underlying, because I had to put it together for an FPL video, when you look at his underlying numbers per 90, he's right up there with the best midfielders in the Premier League. So I think he's actually better than Saka, and he's right up there with Cole Palmer. So yeah, he really is of that level. And I'm pretty sure someone actually corrected me in the comments. I thought Eze was the penalty taker for Palace, but apparently, because I didn't watch the Crystal Palace Man City game, apparently the two of them were on the pitch, and Eze took the penalty for Palace at the time. So yeah, something to think about.
I think somewhere I've gone wrong in the past is actually underestimating the power of availability in a player. And so now that's something that really is part of my thinking when picking a team, like how much are these guys out? And even that's my slight concern on Trent. Trent's in my personal current draft. But against the Trent versus Van Dijk and the Dunk versus Estupiñán, like Duncan Van Dijk are 90-minute men every single week, and that is just worth its weight in gold. We all talk about the power of the bonus, the power of availability is
Absolutely
exactly the same.
Yep.
And then it leads to those more potential for more passes, more tackles, more shots, more goals. And Eze and Elise do not fit that for me.
Yeah, Eze used to, but since that first injury he picked up this season, they look like a similar ilk now of just regular muscle injuries, yeah.
I think it's transfermarket.co.uk or .com. You can go on and see the list of the injuries and how long they've been out for and what area. As soon as you start seeing reoccurring areas like hamstrings, like it's alarm bells. Obviously, Reece James is the biggest culprit there, but yeah, just as I said, my big thing is on availability and picking players that I can hopefully leave all season, and neither of them fit in.
And I got a good story.
But I don't mind them as short-term punts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got a good story that relates to that sort of transfer market thing as well. Because remember when Jared Bowen got injured earlier on in the season, I didn't sell him in FPL, not Sky, but the two obviously interlink. I didn't sell him in FPL because I looked at his injury history on Transfermarkt, and I don't know how old he is. I imagine he's mid-20s now, isn't he, Bowen? So he's played a good number of years. And he had one injury his entire career, and it was a 2-day knock when he played for Hull City. And that was the only injury he's ever had. And it made me think, well, this injury that could be an indefinite period of time, given that record and how available he's been, I don't think he's going to be out for that long. And it proved to be correct. I didn't sell him in FPL. A lot of other players did, spent their transfer, and I managed to basically climb in the top 100k as a result of not selling him, basically because of his record. So yeah, you're absolutely correct on the tried and trusted available players, especially when you don't have a bench.
Yeah, it's even more imperative, isn't it?
Absolutely. We got a couple teams to show people, actually. I put one together myself. Unfortunately, on my screen on OBS, the system we do a stream on, I can't quite read all the names, but I'm pretty sure I can remember them all. Based on what we said about the single game day, I've gone for Kaminsky as my keeper. I think of the two, I'd probably rather hold him given the Burnley fixture run if I needed to. And I think of the two keepers, he's most likely to get the saves bonus. So yeah, for that, I'm just going with him, hoping for a 4 or 5 pointer, double for a captaincy, and then hope for the best, really. Spoken about most of the rest of the team, to be honest. Saliba, Van Dijk and Dunk, I think, are just a shoe-in back three. Palmer, Saka, Rodri, Bowen. Given that West Ham captaincy, I think you've got to go for Bowen, really. And then Watkins, Tony, Haaland up front. I mean, not telling people to copy my team because my rank's no good, but if you wanted to copy that team, I think it'll do you relatively nicely. And then Tony, I mean, he can be interchangeable with Rice, Gross. There are the good options at that price you could quite easily go for if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good team, Tom. Like you said, that back three stinks of passing bonus and lots of minutes on the pitch, and they're three high quality players. And then yeah, that midfield I think is going to be super, super popular, as is Watkins and Haaland as well. And then a couple of nice just little differentials in there with Tony.
Yeah, I've just seen on the chat, Jonathan Maloney's raised a good point on Man City defence. He's saying it's a want, but really hard to fit in a player. And yeah, I'd agree with him. I think Kyle Walker seems to be the most nailed of those Man City defenders. Remember in previous seasons, I've had Ruben Diaz, but I've had him this season and he burned me because he's not immune to a rotation now and then now.
They're all burners, mate. Everyone's been burnt by City. Interestingly, Kyle Walker didn't get passing bonus against Sheffield on the final. No, was it I can't remember who they played. You have to go back through and have a look. But the final game, it wasn't Sheffield, was it? But the final game before... No, it was, wasn't it? Was it? Yeah,
it
was.
I'm just going to check now, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he got passing bonus. I don't know if there's any sort of change there.
Yeah, he didn't. No, he just got the cleano, no passing bonus.
And when you see the numbers from the rest of the players, like Rodri was like triple, they're all triple figures. It's like, has Pep changed something again? And that's going to mean that Kyle Walker is then like missing those passing zones or whatever. It might be something to monitor. My thought, just obviously John's just mentioned City, is that they traditionally always go on those mega runs after Christmas, don't they? It's like clockwork. And I think it's just been ready to dive in when they go on one of those absolute beast mode runs of 11, 12, 13 games of barely conceding and winning 3-4-0 every game.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at their fixtures. We'll obviously they've got to play Brentford twice. So obviously they need that game rescheduled. Yeah, that they just have that in them, don't they, Man City, to go on a crazy run. Yeah. But I guess towards the end of the season, if it's really tight for the title, they've got a run of Crystal Palace, Luton, Tottenham, Nottingham Forest, Wolves, Fulham and West Ham for like the final, 6 or 7 games, plus maybe a Brentford game mixed in there. Sort of April onwards might be the time that they go on that kind of run.
As you know, I'm a Liverpool fan, but you could see them winning every single one of those games.
Yep. That's what they do. I've got a feeling as well. We've not quite seen it yet. Well, we have because they've won both their games in the league, haven't they? I just get the feeling that they're sort of hitting that sort of title running form now. They're just sort of warming up, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's funny, like you can say all the things about City and they're right in the mix again, and it was no different last year, and I don't think it was different the year before. They're always a little bit indifferent in that first half of the season, but they're still right in the mix, so the results are never as bad as what people portray. And then they go on a mega run at some point and then a 10, 12 points clear and they win the league. Repeat.
Just a couple more comments. Jonathan fairly saying that Walker has started every game, but he, according to Adam, did get subbed before 60 minutes against Sheffield United. So that might have been why the passing was there.
That makes sense. So I didn't actually see that.
And then a fair question from Adam as well, given that I've got Rodri in this team. He says, will Rodri's attacking returns be limited with the return of KDB? It's obviously going to play a slightly deeper role, you'd expect. Because, every time I've seen Man City, Rodri really does get on the end of some chances, doesn't he? He's been really getting forward. So it's a fair one. I just think, for me personally, he is, other than Lewis Dunk, is the most guaranteed player in the game to get bonus pretty much every game. And I know Gross and Rice will get similar tiers. I just don't think they're quite as guaranteed. And with the money I have in the bank with this team, I mean, I can afford anyone pretty much. So I might as well go Rodri in my view.
Yeah, I echo similar things. I think KDB will be treated very, very carefully, given again
it's the hamstring, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, he said that's the most severe injury he's had in his career as well. That was Champions League final, wasn't it? Where the initial thing happened, which Rodri then went in later scored when he was off. Right. So Adam's point is fairly is fairly good. But yeah, I think he pops up with goals anyway, and I think that doesn't worry me. I don't think we buy Rodri really for that. It's just a nice little extra bonus, isn't it? His like baseline at the moment seems to be like 8 points, where he'll get tackles and passes.
Yeah, and I think you just know based on history, even like last season when KDB was in the team, you can pretty much guarantee him to get past in every game, and then sort of to supplement that between 7 and 10 attacking returns as well. He just does always knock up with like a blaster from the edge of the box or a knock-on assist or something like that. He's just got that in him, hasn't he? So yeah, I would still go for Rodri, I think.
Yeah, I'm on the same, mate, for sure.
Got your team up next. Did you want to have a chat through that one?
Yeah.
I think this is in relation to a question as well. So I can't remember who asked it because I don't have Twitter up at the moment. But someone asked for a bit of a differential draft. And I think Sam has purposely gone out of his way to pick a couple of different players in here as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's too far away, actually. I think it was just some of those sort of 50-50s on like Dunk versus Estupiñán, Trent versus Van Dijk. I've gone with the player I probably feel there on those two that probably has the slight more attacking upside. I know that Trent's added bonus to his game this year. If you look back through his returns, he's definitely getting in on passes and I think tackles as well. He is clearly a really good goal threat. I mean, he should have scored the rebound from Salah's penalty. Newcastle, he's obviously popped up with a few attacking returns. I think he's got a really high ceiling and his floor is better than it was before.
Yeah, agree with that.
So I think I'll be going with him in my team for sure. Estupiñán, I think we've seen straight away on the return what he can do. He scored an absolute worldie the other day, didn't he? And then he got a 10-pointer against West Ham. I think it was 1 tackle off tackles bonus as well. So the only concern for me there, as I've already said, is injuries. I think if you pop that aside and you went right, someone with a massive ceiling there, an equally good floor maybe to Dunk. Estupiñán is probably your man. We've talked about Saliba. I've mentioned Henderson. I think we this is in the questions. There's a real lack of decent goalkeepers so far at the moment, isn't there? So my plan is just to go cheap and just pick someone and leave them until somebody shows their face as like the Cole Palmer of the goalkeeping world. If not, just let them sit, ride out the -1s, the 2s, and then you're going to get yourself probably a haul here and there. If Henderson's number one, I'll go with him. If Sam Johnson's number one, I'll go with him. Nothing different on the midfield, Tom. Like, I couldn't really find too much else there.
There isn't really, is there? Yep.
No, and especially when you look at captaincies and stuff like that. Of course, other people will have their opinions on what they want in there. That's what I've gone with. And then the real differential up top is the Wolves striker, Cunha. I don't know how much of an effect No Huang will have, but I think he's a really tidy player. And there's a couple of potential captaincy days there for Wolves as well. So I think that's like a nice little outside shot there. We could stick an armband on him, and also he could get some nice returns up until those games and beyond those games as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like it, mate. I'll just chuck in a couple of other names as well, because you're talking about availability, etc. Solanke, none of us don't think we talked about him yet. I think he's a very respectable option. And obviously, Ollie Watkins has been tried and tested and great this season, but he doesn't have a captaincy day, really, that you'd consider him for. So potentially he could be, of all the nailed like shoe-in players that I suggest anyway, he could be the one you take out for someone else. And then we've already mentioned Tony as well, haven't we? I think when you talk about punts, like I think Tony is almost as safe as it comes. But given, like you say, no Mbeumo, he's not actually played Premier League football for 6 months. How good is he in reality going to be? You're taking a bit of a risk there, but you know he's nailed for 90 minutes and going to take penalties, and Solanke is too.
I think I've got Watkins down. I don't know what people in the chat. I think I've got Watkins down for a couple of captaincies over
Have
the.
You?
Yeah, I can't remember what game days, but he's definitely in there.
I might have been.
Do you know what, Tom? It would be nice to see that split, or like on those game days of people choosing different people as opposed to 100% of people on Watkins. Or I think no Salah and Son definitely makes captaincy harder. I think when you go through it and you just look and go, well, normally I would just captain Salah there. Like there's 3 or 4 of them. And then you're looking at the fixture going, I'm not sure I want to do Alexander-Arnold away to Bournemouth like that day, for example. Whereas you normally just go Salah away at Bournemouth, slap the armband on him. So I think the captaincy on days is going to be a little bit more open than maybe before, which would be cool.
Yeah, I stand. I don't know if anyone can. My camera probably won't focus, but I'm looking at the app at the moment. Saturday, the 3rd of February, I stand corrected because, yeah, that's not obviously with Son not being around. You don't want to captain. You're not going to captain him against Everton, and then Villa are away at Sheffield United, so you want to captain Watkins for that day. So yeah, I stand corrected on the no captains front.
I think you've actually just sort of reminded me of another really good differential, Tom, which is Richarlison.
Yeah. What is he in? I haven't even looked to see if he's a midfielder or a striker in Sky.
My app's
Forward.
froze, so you'll have to have a look. I don't know anyone else's app freezes as much as mine, but it's like all the time at the moment.
He's an 8 million striker, but still, that's good value, isn't it? Not that money really means much.
Yeah, and he's started to find his feet, hasn't he? Again, I know that Son has a big impact on that. Like I've watched a lot of the Tottenham games, but he's definitely starting to find his feet, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ticks over really nicely without Son.
Yeah, and I think he might come off the bench for their next fixture, but I do think Maddison will be back very soon as well, so that'll help him.
Yeah, and Van der Ven's not far off, and so is Christian Romero. So I think Tottenham will be back into our thinking probably quite fast after the overhaul. I don't know if anyone's going to punt on any Tottenham assets at overhaul. I really wouldn't argue against that because you've got Pedro Porro. We know that Romero is very close, so if you wanted to risk a repeated hamstring dude, then you go for it. Van der Ven's very close as well. I think he'll be back, and like you said, Maddison. So I think there's some amazing options there, and they're going to be back in our thinking as well. And actually, Tom, that makes me think about the goalkeeper. He's quite a high scoring goalkeeper. He's been getting saves bonus. He's a great shout at 7 million as well.
Yeah, he's one of the top, definitely one of the best keepers in the league for sure. They've done really well getting him. I'm just trying to log into Twitter to get to some of the questions. While we do that, we've had a couple. I'll go back to the screen. We've had a couple in the chat, just looking through them. Spoken about Adam's question. Jonathan Maloney saying he's considering Bernardo Silva over Rodri because of his returns recently. I don't mind that. Dave Hannigan. Go on, mate.
I was going to say, I've looked at that as well. That's a really good shout.
Dave Hannigan is saying, from the drafts, who are you thinking of taking out for Son and Salah when they get back? I mean, for me, I did the draft that I showed. If you go from Kaminsky to Dean Henderson or whoever the Palace keeper is to cover the captaincies, you can still afford to do Saka to Salah. And then I think there's enough cash beyond that to probably do Rodri to Son as well if you fancy it. So, I mean, Saka is the perfect placeholder for Salah, in my opinion.
So I've worked mine out exactly the same. If I've got Henderson in goal and a very similar team to I've just showed there, I can do Rodri and Saka straight out for Son and Salah. I would like to keep Rodri, but when you look at the best possible team, in my eyes, that's affordable. Rodri isn't in that midfield at the moment, but it was very strange to say, and I might be changing that by the end of the season. But as it currently stands, there are other players that I'd rather have in that could then help with building the bigger picture of the team. That makes sense. So I think that's why I've got Saka and Rodri both earmarked. But entry points are difficult back into both of them, aren't they, Tom? So I think that's going to, there might be a bit of time without both of them.
Absolutely. I've got Twitter working now. Couple questions then. One for each of us from FPL Spartans. Got a question for yourself first, mate. What have you done differently at this stage of the season compared to previous years? I think that's very valid given you were saying you'd almost given up at this point last season, but now you're doing really quite well.
So yeah, last year at this stage, I'd actually just started to go differential, which is completely pointless and just not using my transfers effectively. What I decided at the start of this season to do is go in with a template of players that were really available as much as you possibly can be. You can't predict the future on a major injury, but really available players, high scoring players with multiple routes to points, and players that I actually want to leave in there regardless of maybe blanking or not performing quite at the highest level, but knowing that they're a high quality player. That was kind of rule number one with myself when I went in to start the season. And the second one was to really fine tooth comb every single transfer that I made. Is this transfer really going to reap the rewards and actually looking at it quite detailed as opposed to just getting FOMO 5 minutes before a kickoff and then making a move. So that's been the two big differences this season versus last.
I couldn't agree more with what you said. And he's asked me, what are your key learning points so far this season? I'd say probably two things, and they're some of the most basic things really, but I'd say genuinely one of the biggest skills you can learn as a good fantasy football player is just patience. Like when you pick a player, and someone like Bowen, for example, I name him as an example because he's not necessarily a bonus magnet, but you know pretty much as soon as you sell him, he will score the week after you sell him. He's that kind of player. So just stick him with a player, even if they go 2 or 3 games, especially if they're cheap, like Nakamba at the start of the season, absolutely just spunked a transfer on him. And then I think he got 4 or 5 games in a row where he hit tackle bonus. And at that point, I'd sold him and missed out on all his points. So just things like that, staying patient in particular players, especially the really cheap ones, because you're never going to expect the world from them. Noting Nakamba. And I'd say if you're not sure about a transfer as well, just don't make it, particularly in Sky with how valuable they are. If you're 50-50 on it, it's probably worth just sitting on your hands and not making a transfer. I seem to have a bit of a thing, because obviously playing multiple formats, I have a thing where there's always one game where I spunk transfers more than others, kind of to scratch the transfer itch, I guess. I have to do it in one game, it seems. I think for me this season, it's been Sky. I've been making too many just transfers where I've not really thought them through too much. And I think that's partly down to just I've had so much going on in my life outside of fantasy football, well, Sky Fantasy anyway, this year, that it's been really hard to concentrate on it. So I've just not thought about it as much as I should have.
Yeah, it's solid learnings, that, Tom. We've all been there as well on those, haven't we?
Darren Slater has asked, what are your thoughts on the lack of clean sheets this season? And is that making the 3-5-2/3, well, I'm going to put 3-4-3 in there. He hasn't a template pick. I'd say, yeah. We pretty much showed that, haven't we, in both our drafts? I've not made a draft with 4 at the back at the moment. With the exception of one I had Trent in it alongside Van Dijk and that back 3. That was about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with him. The 4-4-2 is obviously really nice and versatile. I just think, and I know that people bang on about this all the time, but just the game is ever changing. So at the moment, that's the current trends. Whether that will continue into the next part of the season remains to be seen. But I think as far as it stands and with the information we've got, absolutely, like 3 is the max I want. If I could have probably 2, I'd probably actually jump down to that, to be honest with you, and getting another forward or another midfielder. So, yeah.
Our good mate Ben has asked us a couple of questions, but I reckon we've kind of answered them with what we said already, and I've seen he's in the chat. He said, will you guys be leaving money in the bank for Salah and Son, or will you cross that bridge when you come to it? I think just by proxy, by picking the best team, you kind of have enough in the bank, don't you? I feel. Well, certainly with the drafts we've shown. And then he's also said, thoughts on Saka? Been a bit disappointing, but you'd expect ownership to be high. And yeah, I think I just look at the rest of the midfielders and I'm not massively like attracted to Saka, not to take that the wrong way, but I don't see many midfielders that float my boat as much as him, really.
No, and I've looked at the fixtures and I'm like, I could sling the armband on Saka a couple of times there. And in my personal preference, I prefer that to the Saliba.
I was going to ask that question, yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, just for those particular games with what I've looked at. And he's a nice placeholder, isn't he, for Salah and Son. And as I talked about at the start, he's returned pretty nicely.
I think he's great. And yeah, I think he's the most popular player in FPL at the moment and across all the game because of obviously AFCON and stuff. But yeah, I really like him, and he ticks the availability box as well, doesn't he? He plays 90 minutes. There's no real competition on the right wing for Arsenal. Plays 90 minutes. He doesn't take all the pens, but he picks up the ball for them and decides whether he wants to take them or not. He just ticks all the boxes, doesn't he? And I still think he is Arsenal's best player. Like, when you want a goal from Arsenal, they will try and give him the ball to score, won't they? In simple terms.
Yeah, I think he's almost, I don't know if there's any Arsenal fans on here, but I think he's definitely been targeted this season for a bit more like double up action. It's a compliment to him, right?
Yeah, I think I was listening to good old Talk Sport when I was driving to training the other night, and I think Arteta put in a complaint, didn't he, to the PGMOL for hacking on Saka and stuff. Didn't really like that, but I think it shows how important Saka is to him and the opposition really taking him seriously.
Yeah. So he's in for me at the moment, and he is the placeholder. If he starts firing, then we're going to have some difficult decisions to make when trying to bring Salah and Son back in, because that's relying on him like not doing overly well. But as you know, if he's doing like 10 pointers and stuff, you're not going to want to take him out, and then that will definitely spice up the game a little bit.
Absolutely, mate. Buongiorno Mattino, I'm pretty sure I pronounced that correctly. He says the best goalkeeper option in general and one with a price range to a max of 7 million. I can't name you a best goalkeeper. I think the chat we had about Kaminsky or Trafford onto the Palace keeper, probably the way to go. I think that's how I'm going to play it, providing we get an outstanding Palace keeper. I mean, other than that, you can pretty much pick a goalkeeper and they'll probably all score similar points towards the end of the season anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got so many names in there. The Tottenham keeper, Neto, the Chelsea keeper, whoever that is at the time, Leno. There's loads in that bracket. None of them are amazing, but we may see a standout appear over the start of the next part of the season. But as it stands, I don't think there is one.
Yeah, completely agree. Sky Flyer, I think, did you reply to this one? He said it'd be nice to see a differential draft, but we've already done that for him. Martin, Amateur FM, says, what is the best and worst transfer you've made so far this year? You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did look at that question, and I I think I can't believe this. After saying what I said about my learnings, I'm now going to say this, but I think I started the season with Ben Chilwell. Having said pick only available players. So Ben Chilwell got injured or dropped against, was it Bournemouth away, I think. And he came on for a few minutes at the end, and I thought, enough is enough. Poch isn't fancying him at the moment. So I moved him on to the next day to Kieran Trippier for the Sheffield game, where Tripp's got clean sheet, passing, and 3 assists, and then proceeded to back that up for, I think, 3 or 4 double-digit hauls over 3 or 4 games. And actually, I then daisy-chained Trippier into Bowen, and then Bowen's given me that run to the end of the season. So that's probably the best use of 2 transfers I've probably ever had on Sky, actually, because Trippier stopped returning pretty much when I moved him into Bowen, and then Bowen went on his run. So that was a really kind of profitable time. And the worst has to be, although I did think about this over a bit of time, I actually steamed into Nkuku for that Palace game. Yeah, you can pull the grimmest face, Tom. I know that Ben did as well. I think Ben blames me for that. So I stuck the armband on him against Palace, and it was just too early in his return to the first team for Chelsea, and pretty poor Chelsea team as well. So yeah, I think I got a 5-point return from that. Luckily, I didn't get punished from whoever I took out, but that wasn't a great pick. So yeah, that's my transfer history of the season so far.
I'll be honest with you, mate. I don't have a best transfer. I can't think of a transfer I've made this season that's really paid off beyond like the obvious ones. But my 2 worst ones, I can think of 2 straight away, and it's that being impatient. Taking out Nakamba when he had 3 games where he didn't get tackle bonus, but he got 3, I'm pretty sure, every game. So it suggested
he got a few.
It suggested he was close. I listened to Paul McNulty on the 3 for 1 podcast. He says, no, I'm sitting on my hands and I'm staying with him. He won the game last year and I didn't listen to him. I sold him and that didn't pay off. And then Charles Morgan's just mentioned him in the chat. Said he's had Onana in all season. I did Onana to Areola because I thought, it's saving me a bit of cash. Onana's not doing anything. Areola's at least getting saves. And then Onana kept, I think, 2 or 3 consecutive clean sheets. And then Areola didn't do anything. So yeah, just losing my rag with 2 players, transferring them out early, and then they go on to score points. I think it's a big lesson learned on those 2 things for me.
Yeah, you've definitely gone on the side of you've had the flip of the coin. There's definitely been some bad luck there, because I don't think any of those moves were particularly bad. You just got on the wrong side of the variance on both of them.
Yeah, but it's a lesson learned anyway, because I think if I were to deal with that situation differently next season, I'd have held the players, to be honest, because ultimately, when you think about it, like Nakamba, the reason was there to keep him, right? 3 tackles a game. It was close. He was going to get it eventually. And then Onana, Areola wasn't even doing that well. And I just thought, it'll save me some cash. I might as well. And then, yeah, just silly for me, really, I think. I regret doing that.
Yeah, like you said, if you look at it really detailed and in its simple fact, would Ariola outscore Onana? We're probably not going to know the answer to that. And really, that should have been the definitive yes to make the move, shouldn't it? But I mean, look at the Nkuku one, exactly the same. So who am I to talk? Yeah, it's a fine balance, isn't it, with those transfers?
Absolutely. I'll just see.
I kept Nakamba there, mate. I nearly moved him out, but there wasn't a standout, so I kept him through that little period, and then I think I eventually moved him to Cole Palmer. And then Cole Palmer stayed into the end of the season.
You've done lovely with that price point then. Well, I've just noticed. Thank you, Bobby. I wonder my notifications on Twitter at the moment are full, aren't they? But that's thanks, Bobby. Thank you for tweeting out our pod. We really appreciate that. Right, I had a couple more replies. MB says triple Brighton defence for the jokes. Dunk and Van Heck look nailed to get tier 2 every week. Estupinian is a spicy differential. He likes the thought of it. One thing I'd say beyond Dunk is it's been quite historic for Brighton that you never really know who the other centre backs are. Webster's back fit. He played against West Ham and they kept a clean sheet. So will he stay in the team? Van Heck go and Dunk start? Other than Dunk, I don't like the rest of the Brighton centre backs.
No, Van Heck's done 11 on the bounce, apparently. The problem is with him, and I know James mentioned this on his pod, is if he gets dropped, you're stuck at that price point and you've probably splashed the cash elsewhere. So you then got to find someone to go to at £6.7 million elsewhere, or hold and just accept he'll be in and out. But I actually like I do think the principle of that's quite a good idea. If you, like you said, if you know who's going to be starting those games, you are going to be looking at 15 points probably per game from the 3 as a minimum. And then if they get some cleans, then you're going to double that, which is really, really attractive given the games. It's just the minutes of Van Heck, but he's played 11, Tom, 11 on the bounce.
You can tell I've not paid enough attention to Sky because Glenn Murray has just said in the chat that Webster went off injured against West Ham as well.
Yeah, I did see that actually in the game. So you think Van Heck's immediate position is probably okay given the history of playing regularly. But you are right with Brighton for sure.
I've just seen Andy Naylor, the Brighton correspondent for The Athletic, at 2:00, so half an hour before this, he tweeted, Webster is okay. He has to analyse his physical condition. So I reckon he's probably fit for next weekend based on that. But yeah, I guess we'll see. Just look to see in the chat if we've got any more questions. Bobby has asked in the chat, what are your guys' thoughts on the Sunday captain first week back?
What's the fixtures, Tom?
I'll just crack them up. We have got... Oh, I've gone way back in time to find... Right, hang on.
It's game week 23, isn't it? Is that
yeah,
right?
so
game week 23.
We talk about picking Ollie Watkins as captain. Sunday, 14th of January, we've got Everton at home to Villa, Man United at home to Tottenham. I think you could genuinely captain Richarlison then, but I think the populace will do Watkins v Everton.
Yeah, I think that's where I'll go. What was it? It's 2 games, is it?
2 games, Everton, Villa, Man United, Tottenham.
Everton, Villa, Man United, Tottenham. Yeah, I think there's a couple of... I think probably Watkins is the standout, but I think there's some other good options there.
Yeah,
Richarlison
totally.
being one of them, or even like a Pedro Porro or something like that. He's ticked over really nicely.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Watkins for me, Bobby, I think as it currently stands, just slam the armband on him. I think he's been really good this season, playing all the games. Couple of assists as well, didn't he, against whoever Burnley?
Yeah, he's joint top of the league table for assists at the moment. I think he's got 8 alongside... Well, in Sky, he's got 11 alongside Mo Salah. So, yeah, interesting one.
Yeah, and they've looked good. Like, I don't want to overthink that.
What else is there? A few people saying they're looking at Vicario. I don't. To be fair, he's probably...
I don't hate that at all.
Yeah, if you were to tell me who is your favourite goalkeeper at the moment, no money, no object, single game days, no object, I'd probably say him, to be fair.
And do you know what else I think that allows you to do? Because I've thought about this, is that allows when Romero comes back, lots of people are going to want Romero back in the team. Nice price, little bit of a nutcase, yes, but 5 points, blah blah blah. Van Heck back and Van de Ven back, Maddison back. Wouldn't want to be missing those points. So if you've got Vicario in goal, you kind of covered a little bit maybe to see that Romero doesn't re-injure himself. He's kind of still looking the same player and stuff, and give you that little bit of time as opposed to just shoehorning him straight back in the team. So I have thought of that. It kind of covers you off with Spurs because inevitably defensively they are going to be popular at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom Sinclair is very fair as well because the stats he's been putting up are excellent. He's saying, is João Pedro a shout with Brighton's games being nice? And they have, obviously, Matoma and Adingra going off to their international tournaments. You definitely think he gets a good amount of minutes. I don't mind that, to be fair. I can't lie. He's the penalty taker for Brighton now, isn't he? And I think he's their leading scorer, in terms of goals at least.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Is he a midfielder as well? No, he looks like a forward. 7.7 million forward. 7 goals, 2 assists. He's only started 9 games, though.
Yeah. But as he's alluded to, few players out and also just looking potentially playing better. Again, I don't follow Brighton hugely, although I watched a couple of their games recently. He looked good against Spurs, but he got on the score sheet from 2 penalties? Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah. And then an assist as well, but had a very, very good game. I don't hate that at all. I don't think I'll be going down that route, but it wouldn't surprise me if he comes out with some nice hauls in those games.
Yeah, completely agree.
It's minutes, Tom, isn't it? Minutes is the issue there, and that's historically been the case with him. I've been burnt by him in fan team and other formats all season. Like taking him out, he started, or started him, he's been benched. It's like it's criminal, isn't it? And I just don't like that in Sky. I like to know, like Ollie Watkins is the prime striker, isn't he? In terms of Sky, 90 minutes, like. Lots of nice routes to points. You just know he's going to play. Obviously, there's others as well, but you want him in those kind of Haaland, Salah, Watkins mould, don't you? Solanke, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Just seeing if we've got anything else in the chat. Do you know anything about the third team? I've not seen anything myself.
No, I don't.
Sorry, Jonathan, you might have to find maybe the 3-for-1 pod. I'm pretty sure they're streaming on, or maybe Bobby said about it in his video as well, but I think the 3-for-1 guys are streaming on Sunday evening, so they might know a bit more. And Bobby just replied to you, mate. He said, agreed, think it's a good chance for a different captain considering Everton's recent defensive form.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess Villa haven't been amazing away from home, but yeah, there's a decent chance to go different. I'd agree with that. I think, like, Man United, I do follow them, but my God, they just look completely open. Like their midfield is non-existent. Every game I've seen them, they've had a big square in the middle of the pitch where they haven't had a player standing in midfield. It's looked horrendous. So you got to think that Spurs will score some goals in that game, even if they don't actually win. I don't see United keeping a clean sheet against Tottenham.
I think there's just off what Bobby said, I think there's quite a few captaincy days where it is a little bit more open because I just don't think the risk of some of the players that are potentially the most nailed on, their ceiling isn't as high as Salah or Son, for example, who are missing out, which I think is going to lend people to potentially punt elsewhere because they're going to think, well, is Watkins really going to get a 16-pointer like Salah got the other night against Newcastle? Obviously, he's probably capable of it, but
doesn't take penalties, does he? That's the one annoying thing about him. He doesn't take the penalties.
Frustrating.
Same with Bowen at West Ham. They just don't take the penalties. That I never like. I don't know. It's something I definitely don't like doing it in FPL and even in Sky. Unless they're a bonus magnet, I feel uncomfortable captaining a player that isn't on their team's penalties.
Who's going to be on spot kicks for Tottenham?
It's a really good question. I don't think anyone knows. I think it'd be Richarlison. You know. I'd have a feeling it'll be Richarlison.
That would make him a much, much, much more attractive differential. I mean, he already is anyway, isn't he? Let's be honest. I think he's going to be in quite a few people's teams. But if he's on pens, then that's a little bit of a game changer.
Yep, totally agree.
So I think it's going to be, although I think it's going to be quite templatey, I do think, like I've said twice already, the captaincy splits are going to be slightly broader, which I think gives you a really good opportunity. If you are doing some chasing, Tom, you can make up some ground.
Ivan Toney's going to do that for me, mate. Unless everyone else picks him as a result of watching this. But yeah, I do like Toney. We'll see how he gets on, but I think it's worth going for in one of my teams.
No, I definitely think he is for sure.
Well, that was it for questions. Was there anything you think we missed or didn't cover in that? Be conscious we've been going on for an hour and 5 minutes. That's absolutely flown by. I've
Yeah, I
lost all
think
track of time.
everyone will be bored stiffless. So yeah, I think that's kind of hit the nail on the head, mate. And that's as much information as we've got at the moment. Of course, I think stuff could happen in the next 9 or 10 days,
Yeah.
but I'm really looking forward to that second half of the season. And I know that 4 to 6 weeks in, it's going to be already chaos and mayhem, and initial plans are going to be out the window. Transfers are going to be burnt, and yeah, be lots of talking points. So looking forward to getting back on it.
Cool. I just want to say I'm sorry we've not been consistent with Sky content on this channel. Just our lives have been really busy where we just haven't had a chance. But yeah, now we've got a nice overhaul and a bit of a free weekend from football and stuff. We thought we'd give it a go. So please don't take this as a commitment to it happening regularly, but certainly did enjoy talking to you, mate. It's bringing back old times, isn't it?
Yeah, let's hope we can get back on another one fairly soon. And just delighted everyone wanted to join us and threw the questions in and that, which has been awesome. And yeah, cheers Bobby for all the retweets and everything like that.
Yeah, the support has been amazing. Considering it's been 3 or 4 months since this channel had an upload, and you got 20 people watching us and loads of stuff on Twitter. Yeah, just really appreciate the support and thank you all very much. And hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, folks. Look forward to interacting with everyone on Twitter.